What's up, guys? Trevor Hunter here at Dirt Bike Test. We are talking about the 2025 Yamaha YZ450FX. We've ridden this bike twice now. Once around the Glen Helen Grand Prix, part of the National Grand Prix Championship, and then we ended up racing the same bike at the 6 Hours of Glen Helen just a few short days ago. And so yeah, we're just going to give our initial thoughts on this bike. Obviously, it hasn't really changed from the 2024 version, but there's some things that we revisited and some things that we're going to look towards kind of maybe changing and modifying kind of from here now that we've ridden the bike in stock form and raced it in nearly stock form. So I guess to start with what we've done so far is at the 6 hour, we raced it nearly in stock trim. The biggest things we did are we put the IMS gas tank on, so that way we could run a dry brake receiver for the multiple pits that we'd be going through for the race. Run the modified Machine Works dry brake receiver. We also ran Dunlop AT82 tires front and rear. We got quite a bit of rain in SoCal leading up to the race, so the dirt was wet, conditions were prime, and the AT82 rear, the scoop direction, was kind of perfect for that terrain. And then the AT82 front tire is probably our favorite Dunlop tire that they offer right now. So that was a no-brainer there. Both wheels were stuffed with nitro mousses front and rear, keep us flat free, keep us rolling throughout the race, and yeah, we could charge hard into the bumps. And aside from that, this bike is very stock. We ran a precision racing steering dampener, just for the high speeds, how rough and choppy it gets. The speeds that we're going, at the front of the pro class, it can get a little hairy at times without steering stabilizer. So just to be kind of safe and be competitive, we bolted the steering stabilizer up. We could run the stock bars, stock bar clamps, stock durable clamps, all that stuff. So luckily we were able to keep it very stock with that precision dampener. What else did we have? We had a Works Connection clutch perch, just for a little bit better feel. The stock one, isn't nothing wrong with the stock one, but the Works Connection gets it smoother, easier to pull. For 6 hours, it goes a long way. Along with, we changed the stock grips out to AME soft half-waffle grips. Like I said, I really like the Yamaha grips myself, but for an endurance race like that, saving the hands really goes a long way. And so putting those softer AMEs for long races like that, I do prefer. For standard GP races, I do like the Yamaha grips, but yeah, like I said, that long race like that, softer AMEs go a long way in preserving your hands. And the one final modification that we made to this bike was the front engine hanger, or front engine bracket. We did this the tail end of our bike last year, but we never got to ride it in stock trim. Kind of rediscovered it a little too late at that point, but that's something we did want to revisit in a stock motorcycle. And that is, with the front engine bracket, we take the stock engine. There's the base plate, and there's an outer plate as well for the two smaller bolts. We take that outer plate off on both sides of the engine bracket, and then we run the shorter through bolt off the YZ450F motocross bike. What this does is basically it changes the front engine mount from what's on the FX to what's now currently on the 2025 YZ450F. And the biggest thing we found with this on the last year's bike, even though it was a modified trim, we found a lot more comfort through the front end. Before, it felt a little rigid, a little harsh feeling through the front end, felt a lot of feedback, and it just at times would be hard to ride, hard to hold on to, especially when the front end got really loaded, on big braking bumps, hard landings, heavy decel loads, stuff like that. We felt a lot of feedback, and just kind of felt a lot through the front end of the bike. And by going to that engine mount style, we really felt like we got rid of a lot of that. And but the one thing that we did notice on last year's bike, and that was even more apparent on this setup, is the front end becomes a little more vague feeling. And that's not necessarily such a bad thing, because this bike does corner really, really well. That bracket mod increases stability quite a bit and increases comfort, but it does reduce the cornering precision. And on the old bike, when we had the triple clamps and we had a few other modifications to the bike, we felt it was a good trade-off. But with this bike in particular, this last weekend, we did feel, although the conditions were a little wet and muddy at times, so it's hard to say. We need to we're going to revisit that one or two more times, just to really confirm what we feel. But so far, The front end is a little bit vague, more vague feeling than we'd like it to be with this modification. So we did really feel an increase in comfort, which is really positive and something we were going for. But we did feel that it lost a little bit of its turning precision, and we were chasing the front end at times and some of the corners and whatnot. So that's something we're going to keep revisiting, see if we can kind of fix that on a stock platform without having to change too many parts. But that is one thing that, there's some pluses and minuses. Overall, I'd say it was a plus because it kind of was with more comfort, more stability. But we would like to find a little bit more of that cornering precision back to just get better cornering better. And we tucked the front end a couple times, pulled a chase sexton, and we lost the lead, lost some spots doing that. But overall, the bike handled really well. There's one thing that really stands out on this bike. It's the motor. This thing is unbelievably fast for how stock it is. We didn't do any mapping changes. We did absolutely nothing to the motor. We just put a fresh air filter in it and ran a new one pump gas, and we went racing. And no bike could keep up with us up the hills, down the fast straightaways. It was pretty apparent how much faster this bike was than a lot of the other bikes, even though a lot of them were all modified 450s with pipes and ECUs and whatnot. This bike is all stock, and it kept up with them, even dropped most of them. Pretty much anytime we had the nerve to hold it wide open. So this motor, unbelievably how fast it is. With the conditions, there's a very open, fast course, nothing really that tight, and then the traction was just at a premium, or traction was ample with the rains in recent weeks. The dirt was just perfect, so we really weren't fighting a loss of traction. Had it been a harder pack, choppier square edge, tight single track, I think the mapping would have been a little bit too much. It's really crisp throttle response, but it's a little upsetting. We got low RPM, low throttle openings. The bike can be a little bit jerky at times. So if we were in a little bit different conditions, I think that's something we would want to play with. But on this day in particular, with how good the dirt was and everything and the track layout, that really worked well. It makes the bike feel light and playful and agile, and you can hop bumps and kind of save energy and be smooth like that. You really have to respect the motor on this bike, and if you just hold it wide open everywhere, anywhere and everywhere, it can bite you. But what we really like about having all the power that this Yamaha does offer is just how smooth you can be with this bike. Some of the other 450s that aren't quite as fast, you have to ride them harder. You might not get in trouble as quickly and as easily, but you also do have to ride them harder. Whereas this, you can be really either lazy or smooth, however you want to say it, and still be really fast and effective on this bike. So the motor on this thing, unreal, and definitely one of the strong suits of this bike. Moving on to the suspension real quick. Suspension was all stock. We left the clickers, or we set the sag at 100 millimeters, something we liked on the last year's bike with the shortened shock, and we like to get on this bike as well. We left the fork height right at 7 millimeters. That's something we would want to change. We are going to play with the stock suspension and stock settings. Try dropping it down a little bit like we did last year with the modified stuff. But overall, the balance, everything felt really good. One thing that was kind of cool, or that we noticed, was on last year's bike in stock trim, we felt the forks were really stiff and just harsh feeling. And something that I think a lot of it is more of the chassis than the actual suspension valving. And by going to that different engine bracket up front, actually if the front end feels a lot softer than did previously. And we started the race like 2 or 3 clicks back out on compression, and by the end of the first lap I was already cranking it back in to stock, and then eventually past stock, just to get a little more hold up in the front end. With the engine bracket modification, we got a lot more comfort out of the front end, and you can feel the suspension moving a lot more freer. And yeah, we ended up just having to stiffen up the fork, whereas before on last year's bike we felt it was almost too stiff. But that was more of a chassis feeling than a suspension feeling. So that was pretty interesting to notice. One thing else we also did was on last year's bike and this year's bike, our very first ride, we liked backing out the high-speed compression on the shock about half a turn, and because the traction was so good and the track was so fast, we're getting a little bit too much squat on the rear end under acceleration, and the rear end was getting low, the front end was getting light, and it's kind of just wallowy and not really not as predictable as we wanted it to be. So we ended up stiffening up the high-speed compression back in a quarter turn. So we ended up being about a quarter turn out from stock, and found that to be a pretty happy spot. So overall, this bike, like I said, hasn't changed from last year, but still one of the favorite bikes in our test units. And we look forward to doing some modifications. Like I said, we're going to keep riding it stock, kind of play around with the stock configuration more before we revisit to where we kind of left off last year and see if we can make any improvements from there. But if you like, reach out to me, Trevor Hunter 224 on Instagram, or Trevor@dirtbiketest.com. Be happy to answer any questions on this bike or anything else we're testing. Visit us at dirtbiketest.com to keep up to date with everything we've got going on there. And yeah, we'll see you on the trail.
If you liked what you saw in this video, come check us out over at dirtbiketest.com on the webs. We have bike tests, product tests, a lot of fresh dirt, and you can even support us by clicking through our links. Hopefully, we'll see you out in the trail.